Hello, true believers. This is Doc Hogg, and welcome to episode 80 of Comics and Variety. If you like this channel, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell to be notified when I post new videos, and for the sake of YouTube's search algorithm, please do hit the like button. Okay, before I get on to today's topic, I want to talk about a couple of comic books that I have backed and recommended here that are still in demand. The first is Door Kicker's Panzer Demon by Scott McCullough. It's basically about a special ops team that goes after horrific otherworldly creatures. Panzer is the German word for tank, so this is probably one hell of a demon that they are going after. So, the second is Magic Cop, Drop Dead Legs. This comic is basically Miami Vice with magic, werewolves, and hot-looking green chicks. Written by Philip Diaz, it looks to be a really great 1980s throwback. So get both of these comics while you still can. I'll provide links to their Indiegogo campaigns in the description below. Alrighty, today I'm going to be looking at 3 independent comic books that involve demons. They include City of Venus, Dead City, Undead Row, and College of the Dead. Okay, Vinnie Tartamella's City of Venus, Dead City. The plot here appears to be that the government is doing experiments on humans, turning them into zombies, and the rebels are fighting back. The protagonist, Jess, wakes up with almost no memory of who she is and encounters one of the rebels, Trista, and in so doing makes enough noise to attract both zombies and agents of the government, led by Captain Uriel. Captain Uriel has been tasked with capturing people like Jess and Trista so that they can be experimented on. Jess and Trista escape, in part due to some unknown weapon that is attached to Jess's wrist. Back at Rebel headquarters, Jess has a bad reaction to something coming from the weapon on her wrist. And on the last page, one of the soldiers under Captain Uriel's command is being experimented on since she failed to bring back any test subjects. So really there are 2 cliffhangers here. One, what is going on with Jess, and second is Captain Uriel having some doubts about the forces that she is working for. There really isn't much negative to say about this comic. The art is very good. The characters have non-approved body type. The plot is solid. Good cliffhangers. Maybe if there's anything that needs some work here, it is some of the dialogue. A little bit of Tartamella's dialogue sometimes seems a bit like, pre-1980s comics where the dialogue assumed the reader was always a 6-year-old kid and so, kind of had to explain the obvious because, it's not always obvious to a 6-year-old. For example, here is Jess seeing Trista for the first time and thinking, maybe I can get some help from her. Well, what else is she going to do? Next, here is Trista being attacked by a zombie and Jess says, I'll save you. Well, we kind of assume she's going to try to help. Why not say something like, hang on. But other than that, City of Venus, Dead City is enjoyable, and I want to know where this story is going, and I'm looking forward to issue 2. So, kudos, Vinnie Tartamella. Okay, let's move on to Undead Row, written by Wes Nodal and illustrated by Tyler Carpenter. Now, the last time I reviewed something involving Tyler Carpenter, it was the graphic novels Demons, which Carpenter had written, and I was pretty hard on it. I hate to do that to an indie comic, so I have to load up on guilt repellent when I do. As noted in a later video, Carpenter was actually pretty nice in response to my criticism, which made me need even more guilt repellent. Not that these are the only times that I use guilt repellent, but it's good to have an excuse. And so, on to Undead Row. For starters, the art is good, and I think it works quite well as just black and white. Carpenter has a lot of potential as an artist, in my opinion. Now, this comic has an interesting premise. A death row inmate who is about to get the electric chair is given a serum that will turn him into a zombie after he is dead. The serum is administered by a member of the Army named Sergeant James Thomas, who is trying to create undead soldiers for the armed forces. And, of course, it all goes wrong, and both prisoners and guards now have to try to escape a prison filled with zombies. While that's a good way to start, actually, I think a great way to start, unfortunately, it just doesn't really work here, and here's why. I think Undead Row's biggest problem is what I call Walking Dead-itis, which is that every zombie story now has to have a big cast of characters. Undead Row includes the characters of the Warden, Simon, Marlene, Dreads, Fawn, Sergeant James Thomas, and Officers Sinclair and Kincaid. The risk you take with having so many characters is that you don't focus on just a few and develop them, but rather try to give every character his or her due, and in the process, none of them get their due. And unfortunately, that happens here. Only Officer Kincaid has much of a character arc. None of the others really do, and ultimately, we don't care about any of them. We aren't rooting for any of them to survive or feel much loss if they don't. Or if they're an evil character, we don't feel any satisfaction if the zombies make a meal of them in the end. At the end, only Sinclair and Fawn make it out, but they die as the military, deciding things have gotten out of control, shoot missiles into the prison. But again, we don't really care that much because the story is focused very little on Sinclair and Fawn. And as such, I just didn't care much that they survived the zombies only to get killed the moment after they escape. Now, before I move on to College of the Dead, let me say that I certainly understand why people would want to model their comic books, especially if their comic books deal with zombies, why they would want to model it on The Walking Dead. I mean, The Walking Dead is not only the best bit of entertainment ever produced regarding zombies, it is maybe the best bit of entertainment ever produced for television. I mean, certainly the first couple of seasons. So it's, of course, very understandable why you'd want to model your comic book or anything else dealing with zombies on, really the best show about zombies ever. But that said, there's a lot more that you can do with a TV show that has, 16 episodes per season where, you can explore multiple characters. And then when you get tired of those characters, you can kill one of them off and bring in a new character to explore. It's a little harder to do that when you're writing a graphic novel that is maybe 100 pages. I mean, you can't explore 7 or 8 characters really in that kind of medium. On television, for a series that lasts, multiple seasons, yes, you can do that. But a much more constrained medium, no, you cannot. Okay, now moving on to College of the Dead by Adam Post. Let me say it also suffers from Walking Dead-itis, but fortunately to a much lesser degree. The first few pages gives us a bio paragraph of each character, and there are a lot of characters. But Post and his writer, Stefan Petruka, are smart in that most of the focus is on of the story is on 3 characters: Professor Elena Demikov, her daughter Ayn, and Chloe Manning, a college student who idolizes Professor Demikov. Post and Petruka are also smart in that they eliminate 2 of the characters, Marie Kano and Debbie Tatterling, very quickly in the comic, which makes me wonder why those characters needed a bio, but on the other hand, eliminating them allows the comic to focus on just those 3 characters, and you end up glad that they did. Now, Professor Demikov is the ruthless one. She is not only a professor, but she also sells drugs to students. And as the college is surrounded by zombies, she comes up with a plan to escape. She calls a football player by the name of Dustin Trapp, who sells drugs for her. And earlier in the day, she had given him a package of amphetamines to sell. And she calls him and tells him to spike the football team's water. That way the football team will fight a path through the zombies. Now, Professor Demikov's daughter, Ayn, is insane, and one reason Demikov sells drugs is to fund Ayn's medication. But as the world they live in becomes insane, Ein decides to stop taking her medication, figuring that going insane is the best way to survive. Now, Chloe Manning is the naive and more importantly, the compassionate one. And her compassion is what enables all three of them to survive at the end. Professor Demikov's ruthlessness has worked. The football players do cut a path through the zombies. But Professor Demikov is in more danger in that her daughter Ein hates her and wants her dead, and Ein gets Chloe to agree to kill Professor Demikov. Basically, Ein takes Chloe's car keys and says, I'll give the keys back to you so you can escape if you kill my mom. But at the last moment, Chloe has mercy on Professor Demikov and agrees to set a trap for Ein so the two of them can subdue Ein and Professor Demikov can get her back on her medication. So ultimately what I think Post and Petruka have done here is show how human characteristics that are completely opposite, in this case ruthlessness and compassion, are both necessary if one is going to survive a life and death situation. On the one hand, no one will survive the zombies unless they cooperate, which requires having some concern or compassion for other people. On the other hand, you have to be willing to accept that some people will probably die and maybe even have to be sacrificed for others to survive. Professor Demikov and Ein probably don't survive unless Chloe has compassion for both of them, but neither do they get to that point unless Demikov is ruthless enough to put the entire football team in harm's way. Anyways, College of the Dead is both fun and interesting. Adam Post and his team have done a really nice job here, and that's why I'm glad that Post has announced that there will be a College of the Dead 2. I'm going to end this with one more criticism of College of the Dead in the hopes that it will be rectified in part 2. And that's this. Universities used to be repositories of knowledge. Now they are repositories of absurdity. And I think a zombie invasion of a campus is a great setting to have some fun with that. For example, take this scene from College of the Dead. What if the dialogue went like this? That zombie, he's going to eat him. Don't be insensitive. That zombie could be trans or non-binary. Watch your pronouns. So, Adam, I hope you're watching. Alrighty, the music means that it is time for Hogg's Headlines, all the news that I want to talk about. Dateline.
We have the meat.
The New York Daily News reports that a Missouri church leader and professor offered to compensate students for sexual favors using an Arby's gift card. According to the article, Barry Pointer, 57, a Kirksville, Missouri resident, professor at Truman State University, and a church elder with the Kirksville Church of Christ, used the handle DILF on Grindr to connect with male students at Truman State. Pointer then offered to pay for sexual acts in unorthodox ways, telling an undercover officer that he might throw in an Arby's card, along with paying to fuel up the officer's vehicle at a local gas station. Yeah, I bet that's all he'd fuel up. Pointer said he was interested in a sugar daddy relationship, and that he'd provided partners with gift cards, clothes, and cold hard cash in the past. Sugar daddy, huh? Looks to me like he was also interested in a blow pop relationship. Dateline, Ick. Yes, it's our good friend, the man pretending to be a woman so he can get other women to touch his junk, Jonathan, erroneously Jessica, Yaniv. Yaniv, as you probably know, made news a few months ago for filing complaints with the British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal against beauty salons that would not give his member a Brazilian wax. Well, he recently took to Twitter to complain that a gynecologist wouldn't treat him. In a now-deleted tweet, he said, quote, "So a gynecologist's office that I got referred to literally told me today that we don't serve transgender patients, and me being me, I'm shocked and confused and hurt. Are they allowed to do that legally? Isn't that against the college practices?" YouTube personality Blair White responded to Yaniv with this tweet. So why am I bringing in Blair White? Well, according to the Post-Millennial, numerous teenagers have come forward with allegations that Yaniv masturbated to them while on private Skype groups. And a 15-year-old fan of Blair's alleged that Yaniv masturbated on video to her while moaning Blair White's name.
Things that make you go, "Buh."
Okay, that's definitely all for now. Until next time, have a very nice day.
We have the meat.